Hey everybody, this is Rydo and we're back to another live stream of Hearthstone. Today is Monday, September 9th. We are starting late as what is probably just going to be a tradition for all of winter. Don't be surprised if it doesn't shift too much. Let's see, we're on the Americas account just because I guess I stupidly opened the Americas account. I don't think we really need to do any of the Tavern Brawls, but we'll just start with the Americas account and work our way through this. We have Overload 10 cards, which is way less desirable than winning two Druid games or playing 5 Elementals. So I'm going to re-roll this. Deal 65 damage to the hero. Sounds fine to me. We'll just jump in here for a second to make sure we've done that. So, Druid. We need one ranked victory before the end of the month. Almost certainly we would get that. So I was thinking briefly, like for the most part I goofed around this weekend. Getting back into the habit is hard after that long live stream of Control.
I must protect the wild.
I was thinking about playing Wolfenstein Youngbloods. Now there is a new patch out for Wolfenstein Youngbloods, but apparently it does not include the to be added later RTX supply, RTX support. So there's really no reason for me to play Wolfenstein Youngbloods right now. In a weird way, because the game, I think it's fair to describe, was launched as broken and unfinished and unpolished. It's gotten a 1.05, I believe, is the version number upgrade to fix a lot of the problems, but it also claimed and supported, and it was part of the you get this game for free if you buy a new NVIDIA graphics card. It's supposed to have ray tracing support. I looked all through the video settings, all through the advanced setting. Nothing says ray tracing. Nothing says deep level super sampling ray tracing or anything like that. I looked through the GeForce experience. Nothing compared to Control had any setting that was labeled as ray tracing. So I am assuming it is not there. Either that or I am just too dumb to figure out what ray tracing is, or if it goes under some other name, which I doubt, because I think you would be very upfront about putting RTX or ray tracing in the name of any ability or effect. So yeah, that game is on hold. So I need to go back and play Torchlight 1, and if some miracle happens and I have have some extra time, I'll do it later tonight, but almost certainly that won't happen. So mostly what I've been doing this weekend is I got distracted. I think I finally got Calibre, the newest version, installed on my server. That Calibre being a ebook management software with a web server. I think I finally got that web server to actually work. Again, it was a case of, because Calibre 2 point something had a terrible web server that didn't work, I was using a lot of third-party web servers that also didn't really want to work, probably because of incompatibility issues now that I think about it. And so at one point I had it working through one of 3 or 4 different third-party softwares, web servers, that were just creating their own web server based on the same database, based on the same information. With Calibre 3, doesn't seem like it really needs to be that way, so I think I finally got that worked. The only thing I haven't worked on now is Pterodactyl, and I'm not sure I'm not sure I'm ever gonna get that to work as well as I would like it to, or to work at all. Let's be honest, it's not even installed, it seems. Pterodactyl being a game server software where you could run like Minecraft servers and things like that. But instead, what I ran across, and this was just in coincidence, is a software server package called Apache Guacamole, which is Apache is a foundation that seems to cover a lot of different softwares, or take a lot of softwares into their foundation, is what I understand Apache to be. So Guacamole, which I realize I can't consistently spell guacamole correct while setting this up, is a remote server management software that turns it from, there's two parts, there's a server part and then there's a client part. And the client part is an HTML5 just web server. So no longer do you need, if you have a web server set up, no longer do you need to be on some client's computer and install something like remote desktop, which remote desktop on Windows would be installed, but then you'd have to configure it, type in passwords and all of that. But if you don't need like a VNC software, which on Windows, frankly, at this point, VNC support is limited at best. So, yeah, there's an element here of just removing the need to install software and moving it all to a moving it all to a web browser. So the only thing you would need now is to access pretty much anything is a web browser. This all integrates nicely with Nextcloud, where Nextcloud yeah, next I did that totally wrong. What? I totally screwed up there. Because Nextcloud can then point to the Guacamole website, but you can't put it in an iframe just because the Guacamole server needs to be able to access your keyboard consistently, so that when you're typing on the website, it sends those keystrokes through to either a remote desktop that is being run and configured and connected to. What this allows you to do is have a firewall, effectively, where inside a network, inside like a local area network, you can have some insecure, easy to hack VNCs, because VNC is incredibly insecure and easy to hack nowadays. It does not have any good security on it, particularly VNC. Now, Remote Desktop Protocol and some of the other ones even above that, if you can set them up on your specific computers or servers, probably are a lot better and a lot more efficient. But VNC is the old standard, and it's, for a lot of particularly Linux things, it's not super easy to replace VNC. Like I don't think on Debian, on my Debian server, I could install Remote Desktop, but I have like plenty of apps on my phone that I've been using to configure the server, because the number one problem with my server is that I don't want to have to sit in front of it in the room it's in, because it doesn't have a good ceiling fan that cools the room, and it's just, there's no good comfortable chair in front of it. So any kind of remote management is helpful. It's also effectively a home lab, so remote management is what you would be wanting to teach yourself and practice on anyways. It's very rarely the case that you would have to or want to get right in front of a server, particularly if that server is potentially miles away from where you work. But Guacamole lets you have a HTTPS, if you configure Let's Encrypt or some other encryption, it lets you have a encrypted website to access that throughout the internet without exposing the extra ports and the VNC process. It also has some nice features in which it fixes the fact that VNC by default does not have any sound support. So you are instead, you can now fix that and actually get sound. For remote support, having sound probably isn't super useful. It's not like you're going to listen to music and enjoy it. You can listen to music, I tested that, but you are going to have stuttering happen. It's not going to be a smooth experience. But what it would be helpful for is if there's if the computer is beeping at you, if it's playing music when it shouldn't be, then that could be an issue. It has copy and paste sharing for the clipboard. If you use the keyboard Control V shortcuts, it can't integrate into the mouse copy and paste. So if there's something in the clipboard and you right click on the remote thing, it won't have the paste button enabled, but it works pretty well. And it integrates into VNC a secure FTP setup, although my setup's weird because you can download a file, but then it doesn't stop downloading and close the connection until I log out. So you can say, I want this file, I want this file, I want this file 50 times if you're not paying attention. And then when you log out, all of a sudden at the bottom of the Chrome browser, maybe this is just Chrome too, you'll get all the files popping up. Almost certainly that's a misconfiguration on my part, but there really aren't a lot of options, so I don't know what I misconfigured there. But it might be a keep alive signal being misconfigured, because I had told it to send keep alive signals when downloading through SFTP. And then the best part about Guacamole, in my opinion, is the number one thing I have a problem with, and I think maybe a lot of IT people have a problem with, is documentation. So you can set up Guacamole to just automatically record what you do. So if you're doing remote administration and you're trying to fix something, and then the next day you've forgotten what you did, or you're like, oh yeah, that worked great, now I've got a video I could show to other people about this is exactly how to set this up, that it can just automatically do that. Or if you're the boss of other IT people, or just the boss of people in general, and you want to make sure that they're actually doing what they're supposed to be doing and they're not goofing around, or they're not doing something malicious like deleting files, you've got that automatic recording. But even without the automatic recording, Guacamole is great because it means you can just give a username and password to an employee, and then the computers they're supposed to access are shown as just a menu option. It has SSH support too, so that means they can connect remotely just via the text to the terminal if that's all they really need to do. It'll record that text input too and save a little space. Or it can be full VNC where they see a desktop and do all the setup there. But yeah, it's a great way to limit IT people down to just what they need to control, and limit them in the number of passwords they need to know. It gets rid of the VNC protocol going over the internet, which is a great support. If you include HTTPS, it should be relatively secure and modern compared to probably anything else, because the only other thing you could do with VNC these days is put it through SSH to encrypt it, and SSH on Debian Linux at least uses OpenSSL, which is the exact same encryption software that's used for HTTPS. The only thing you could make an argument for at a very high theoretical level is that web browsers' support of the newest of the new encryption software is falling behind. So if you were doing some kind of homebrew setup where you wanted Diffie Hellman elliptical curve encryption encoding, then you probably wouldn't find a browser that supported that specific curve that you're specifically trying to use. To the point where I'm thinking even the new standards established by the National Institute of Standardized Technology, I don't think half of those standards that they say to use for elliptical curves are supported by browsers. So sometimes security is a trade-off with just accessibility. But yeah, it was really interesting, and it caught my eye, and it caused me to spend more time messing with my server instead of playing video games, which more and more that's what I'm spending my time with. I'm not even going to say it's free time, I'm just going to say it's time. But I did do Control, so I finished the game. I feel like I deserve a little bit of a break. I don't want to drive myself crazy playing video game after video game after video game. And the only way I can think that I avoid at some point just rage quitting video games in total would be to take these breaks every now and then and take a weekend off. Effectively, that's what I did. Of course, most people are not as geeky as I am, so the idea of taking a weekend off and then using that time to play on a home server is ridiculous. Yep. The next cloud's coming out pretty good, although I am using the home Windows sync software that it has, and it seems like it's running into a problem of uploading a couple files, and I don't know why. Uploading and downloading files, there's probably something in the background there that it would explain that, but I'm not sure what it is. Okay.
Got one.
So, moving on from that, my goal this week is to play Torchlight and try and finish Torchlight. That's pretty much my only goal. I curated some of the news we're gonna go through here, but let's just burn through the news. I don't see a reason to have a Monday show like this go extremely long. I'm back to kind of a normal amount of news now, and we'll be looking at a lot of games. I suppose the clock is reset here, although I could not get a story here that seemed to corroborate this accusation. So, but it seems like a game developer, Japanese visual novel developer who is known for and specifically admits to drawing the characters young looking, and he's like, that's my art style, that art style sells, let's not kid ourselves. It seems like he was either preemptively warned to not even apply to Steam, or he actually did apply to Steam and they preemptively said no. Perhaps that is in general what's going on with Steam nowadays, and that's the reason why we haven't had these stories where it's like, oh, I had it all ready to go at Steam, and then they just rejected it for approval, because we haven't had one of those stories in a while. So maybe they've just gotten good about dealing with the customers and the game publishers that they want to deal with, and preemptively warning people off that they don't want. When you look at the collection of games on Steam, there is clearly a lack of games that have the art style where kids are depicted particularly young in animated visual novels. And in general, there's very little depiction of young kids at all. It's like they're not allowed to exist at all in video games. When you get maybe The Last of Us Ellie, 13-year-old, but when you're talking any character that's supposed to be between a baby, which you very rarely see babies in video games, and I'm not saying this, don't take this wrong in any way. I mean, you just don't see them depicted in any scenario at all. You never see babies. You kind of never see pregnancy. You kind of never see 1-year-olds, 2-year-olds, 3-year-olds, 4-year-olds, 5-year-olds, 6, 10-year-olds even. Like there's a whole decade there that is just not depicted. Same might be true for other forms of entertainment, with the exception of books, because like, yeah, To Kill a Mockingbird, I think the main characters were 10 or 11, like Huckleberry Finn. You have a lot of kids characters in books, but when you get to TV and movies, most of the child actors are not going for anything less than a 14, 15, and there's reasons for that. There's limitations, but those limitations don't make sense in the video game world. So yeah, if you're depicting young kids whatsoever, it seems like you're highly unlikely to be allowed on Steam, particularly if you're doing a visual novel, particularly if that visual novel has any kind of romance elements in it at all, even if that specific character is not involved in the romance, and definitely if that character is involved in the romance, and they look young, and look young versus being young, it is a big argument, certainly, of opinion. So yeah, there's a level of censorship going on there, controlling of the artists, as far as what Valve allows on their storefront and what they don't. It's a level of curation at the very least, if you don't want to use the phrase censorship, which is weird because then you have a lot of stuff that clearly isn't curated. So it's an odd double standard. As soon as you start curating / censoring one thing, you have to at some point curate and censor everything. Otherwise, there's that complaint. There's complaints of unfairness. So the other story that I don't really have any article about is, it came out, and this was kind of a flash in the pan story, that it was believed that Valve had added something to their agreement that said, if you agree to put this game on our storefront, it has to be released at the same time as it is released at any other storefront. So it seemed like a direct response against the Epic Store. Now, why it would be a direct response against the Epic Store when, frankly, other people had already done things like this. At least a few other publishers had made their games exclusive to their own launcher before the Epic Store even existed. And it turns out that the language in the Steam contract has been in existence since 2017, before the Epic Store, I think, came out in any real form or fashion. So the lawyers had, I guess, the wording in there. The question would be enforcement / damages. And the only thing I could imagine they could do is, if they have any idea that they were going to enforce this, which I don't think that Valve is going to bother to enforce it, because Valve, remember, has no corporate structure, so them getting a legal team involved and having them spend their billable hours to go after what would effectively be AAA game developers too. I mean, I don't think Valve wants to piss off 2K or Gearbox by suing them, since they went with an Epic Store exclusive. It also spits in the face of their libertarian ideals if they went and sued people for this stuff. So there isn't really a good example. Either you sue a AAA publisher developer and piss them off and potentially lose a lot more money, or you sue some indie developer who probably made no money anyways, and it's not worth the lawsuit. The only example that I think this wording in the contract would ever be implemented on is if it is some small troll developer that just is constantly putting their games on the storefront and then using it as advertising, and then not actually releasing it on the storefront. And part of this also might be a question about when do they actually agree to that specific contract, because it might be a case that you have to agree to that contract when you upload the game files, instead of agreeing to that contract when you create a Steam page. So there might be a non-binding element to it, if I was just to speculate wildly, because it would be really weird for them to have to agree to a contract when making a developer account or publisher account, and then 10 years down the line they decide to do an exclusive on their 5th game, and that they get sued for something they agreed to way in the past. The one thing I think that if Valve was going to do anything is that they should not list not list games that are exclusives, but if they don't list games that are exclusive, then it becomes a search engine optimization mistake, because right now if you type in Borderlands 3, there's still a decent chance in the top 3 results you're going to get Borderlands 3 on Steam, even though it is an Epic Store exclusive. And we'll talk a little bit about Borderlands 3. In a moment. So, but yeah, that legalese in the contract has always been there, and it really isn't super enforceable unless they want to cut off their nose to spite their face. If they could prove that what could happen here is if 2K or Gearbox went really crazy, pulled all of their software off of Valve for no reason, and then swore that they were never going to list anything on Steam ever again, then at that point Steam might sue Gearbox, and what if they sued them, they could potentially argue damages in lost sales.
This guy's
So it would be the 30% cut on the number of games that were sold on the Epic Store, multiplied by whatever in court Steam could argue their share of their market share of PC gaming is. So if Steam gets 80% of all the game sales for PC gaming, and Epic Store only gets, let's see if we can make this easy, 1% of sales, or 10% of sales, well, and yeah, let's say 10%. So if at that point you know that the let's go take our victory. So if you know that the Epic Store sold 1 million copies, then you could argue that 8 million more copies would have been sold on top of that 1 million copies on the Steam store. So then you could say, well, Valve's damages might be calculated at 8 million times 30% times the value of Borderlands 3 times $60, which I don't know if I could really do that math. I'm gonna play Mage here and see if I can play Elementals. I don't know what would really even have Elementals in it. Yeah, I'd have to bring out a calculator, I would think. That's way too much.
Jaina
But
versus Rexar.
Let the hunt begin.
You asked for it.
I would say it's probably putting it at $500 million, $500 million worth of worth of damages. Like that's where I think it would break down to. So yeah, you could get into that long lawsuit and you could try to have that as Valve against Gearbox, but you would only want to do that if Randy Pitchford really just went crazy and said, we're going to remove everything from Steam so they're not then financially incentivized to continue to have a good relationship with them, and that they're swearing to never you're swearing to never do business with them again, which those kind of statements are things that aren't usually done publicly, even by Randy Pitchford. I think Valve would be much more happy to simply have the Epic Game Store either fail completely or just stay at its current level of user base, or even grow a little bit slowly, instead of starting a big fight that it really probably doesn't need to start. Moving on, we have a Chinese RPG game here on Steam. English is not supported, and it just looks like an RPG Maker game, although it is adapting a different art style here. I assume this is Chinese. 59 cents discounted, yes, Chinese. So it's an interesting art style, but this is not really an art style that works in fluid motion. As far as I've seen, I'd be interested to see somebody try, but you can see here it's just standard RPG elements otherwise. One of the articles I was reading from Kimetsu talked about how just having a completely deceptive art style for your
I wonder.
for your thumbnail was the way to go, even though it's completely deceptive. And yeah, whether it's a good thing or a bad thing, it certainly seems like it is an industry standard thing to have at least slightly deceptive thumbnails on video games on the Steam storefront. And I don't think Valve would ever want to do anything to combat that. So I imagine that's not going to change. Let's see. I need to play something, don't I?
We must band together, united for Dalaran.
There we go. I don't know what cards I'm supposed to play that would double these cards. Moving on, we have a game on Steam called Wake Up Good Guardian. It looks like an RPG game. It looks like it's maybe an effort here to actually draw some custom characters, but it still kind of looks like an RPG Maker game. This is an art style here that is heavily shaded, overly shaded, which I bet on a white background in a manga, this would look a lot more interesting than being in the background of the game, because this just comes off as a little bit dark, but detailed. Certainly, somebody is putting an effort here to draw these characters, and it is, I would say, coming closer to an art style than just an inability to draw or mimic some other art style. So that's interesting. $2.54 discounted, English only. But it is still just an RPG Maker looking game.
Ha! You call that?
There we go.
I let the dogs out.
Destroy a minion, summon 2 copies, the same cost to replace it. That doesn't help me much. Let's see, next we have a game on Steam called Red Black Poker. This looks like this is more of a video poker game than actual poker. It's a little surprising video poker games haven't ported themselves over to Steam, but I imagine the gaming commissions and such spend so much effort making their own video poker software that it doesn't run effectively on just a standard Windows PC, or they want to at least not allow it to be out there so that people could hack it. That makes a lot more sense, actually. $4.79 discount, that's too expensive. English with full audio.
What to do? What to do?
Yeah, I don't know why you would want to play a video poker game on PC, but if you did love video poker, I guess this looks alright. That being said, yeah, it's weird. It definitely is weird. This, and then this.
Time runs out on me.
Yeah. The only reason I think people even play video poker in general is because they're going to bars and they don't have anything better to do. And mostly you only see video poker in bars that are at like truck stops where you have a high chance of people arriving there alone and spending their entire time there alone. Okay, this,
Someday I'll be just like
this,
you. Someday I'll be just like you.
and this, and
The
this.
future is ours.
Attack here. I'm not gonna make this guy run out of cards.
Time runs out on me. Behold the tools of creation. Behold the tools of creation. Behold the tools of creation.
I'm just drawing cards like crazy. I don't know if I've managed to deal any kind of blow here that would actually save my bacon. He can do here 2 here. He can do 8 between these two. If I could get rid of all of my cards and all my minions on the field, I'd win if I could kill this. Which, I guess I could do that with this card. So if I could just play, get rid of this, get rid of that, and get rid of these 12 extra cards, which would be insane.
I move quickly.
Yeah, I think he's got a victory here. That,
Arena's full.
and then that, and then we need
Me?
here, here, and that,
Aha!
and that, and that.
Aha! Aha!
And let's see. We have 18 plus that would be 24, so that's really not enough. Hit that.
Time runs out on me.
Hit that. And that. And do that.
Aha! Job done.
There's no way I survive though, he just uses his hero power and he wins. I just didn't have enough mana. And that's one elemental, and we could try this other mage and see if there's more elementals here. Next we have a game on Steam here called SEVR World Demo, which looks like it is just a demo, to say this least.
The light shall bring
There's some
victory.
interesting
You
things
asked for
here,
it.
but they could just be. They are just saying they're demos. So showcase that introduces game mechanics which will be in a new game. Why is this allowed on Steam? It's free, sure, but this is basically advertisement for something that's not out yet. So I guess this is something that should be allowed, though it's English only and it's free. I guess demos, like, that's the weird thing, is that we've gotten so far away from the world of demos even being a thing, that now that I see somebody actually release a demo to a game that isn't out yet, I'm thinking to myself, boy, is that a weird choice.
Job done.
Moving on, we have a game on Steam called Tank Man, which is just a top-down tank versus tank game. We've seen these before. This isn't terrible graphics for what it is, but again, this is something that would have been a 90s game. Like, if you got this on the 3.5 floppy disk, I'd be fine with this game, but paying $1.19 nowadays in 2019, even at a discount, it's not worth it. This is also English only and has a bunch of achievements. Let's see. Alright. This.
I'll be just like you.
And then I need to wait next turn. Let's see if I can cast.
Of course it's the right way.
Get some random spells. Next, we have a game on Steam called Amora Crystals. Let's see what this video actually looks like. It looks like a simplistic platformer game. It seems like the camera is a little too zoomed in for what it is. There definitely were some NES games that, in their, if they were more zoomed in a little bit, they would have been a little bit easier to control. But a perfect game quotes my mom, and a lot of Donkey Kong influence here and Mario influence here. Best game ever, my dad. This is actually too zoomed in. It's not enough square footage on the screen. $2.99, English and Portuguese Brazil, and you gotta hand it to the Portuguese Brazil people. Right. So I'm gonna do this, and then I'm gonna do this, and then I'm gonna do this, and then I'm gonna attack here. More crystal, not impressive enough to make it to the follow list. Let's see. Gamatsu has an article here. Full break third-person shooter for the PC, PS4. Magosphere of the Magical Girl has been announced. The PC version is playable at the Tokyo Game Show 2019. So this looks like it's going to be a 3D magical girl shooting guns style game, which we could use a little bit more of those. Interesting transformation sequence in a video game, which we don't get a lot of that. Like, it gets like parodied every now and then, but not even as often as it probably should, considering how many Sailor Moon-esque shows with transformations exist or did exist. Like, otherwise this seems alright, but not amazingly good as far as what you're gonna do. I feel like Bullet Witch was a lot like this game too, except for Bullet Witch at some point tried to make itself more appealing to the West, so they made the character.
Time runs out.
Well, I guess at the time that Bullet Witch was made, it may have just not been, anime may have not been as much into the moe style as much as it is nowadays.
Arena's full. Beat.
So that might have been the art style at the time. Like, yeah, Bayonetta, by today's standards, Bayonetta would probably not be a tall tsundere, black-haired woman. She'd probably be a short moe character. Or at the very least, there would be a short moe character added to it. And I guess there kind of was in the sequel. And the little girl in Bayonetta 1. But even she's not animated in that style. So the tastes have shifted, certainly in the animation styles, over the past decade or so. Next we have a game on Steam called Desert Monsters, which you don't get a lot of beholders in games, considering how common I think they are in Dungeons and Dragons. I think part of the problem is you don't normally see a beholder this large either. But clearly this is an asset flip where the asset was just scaled up, and then you have a character you're playing as that's mostly covered in a shroud and a generic skybox with a generic desert, and there's kind of nothing else to do here, so I don't know why you would even want to spend 5 seconds playing this game. 99 cents, English only. Desert Monsters definitely not making it to the list.
Is ours. Behold the tools of creation.
Let's see.
Back of the line. Back of the line.
Time runs out on me.
I guess. Gamma Sutra has an article here. Get a job. Bending Spoons is hiring a game lead. This is in my land, Italy. You don't see a lot of game companies in Milan, Italy. I'm not sure I've seen any actually.
Of course it's the right way.
It's an iOS developer, so I don't know what Bending Spoons has made, but you would be making cell phone games almost certainly. You get into a weird position, certainly, where
We must band together, united for Dalaran!
where there's,
Behold the tools of creation.
let's see,
Return to nothing.
yeah, you get into a weird position where if you're making mobile phone games, it's really hard to then stop making mobile phone games and have this level of respectability to make even independent games versus mobile games, let alone AA, AAA, single A games. I'm still not sure if I really believe there's such thing as a single A game that's different than an independent game, other than maybe you can make the argument that that an independent game is actually truly from an independent company, where a single A game would just be it still has a publisher, but it's not as big of a focus. Next we have a game on Steam called Greedfall. Now I saw this trailer on YouTube, and this trailer video that was actually playing as an ad, and this ad actually caught my attention and made me watch it all the way through, which I cannot stress how exceedingly rare that is. Maybe once every 3 or 4 months there's one ad on YouTube that catches my attention. Now that is in part because I don't allow YouTube to ad track to me, so I am just seeing whatever random videos they want to give me. They're changing how they're going to treat a lot of kids' content so it doesn't ad track, so I imagine kids might get bored of watching things on YouTube in general because of that. But as a content creator who is not making kids content, or at least hopefully is not getting labeled as making kids content, I think this might be a good turn of events for content creators like me to potentially profit off the suffering of others.
I've got more left in me.
So yeah, Greedfall looks amazingly interesting. It's from Focus Home Interactive, which is a name I recognize, so let's see, what else have they made? Farming Simulator 19, Vampire, Blood Bowl 2, A Plague Tale, Innocence. As far as what they published, this is the publisher. So they're in moderately good what's the word, company. Yeah, you can see it's mostly positive right now. This just came out, so, and I'm signed out, so we're gonna have to go back to the old system, I guess, of just leaving tabs open until I sign in again. That wasn't too bad though. I stayed signed into Steam for like 30 days, at least 2 weeks. Greedfall looks extremely interesting. I think I'm gonna put it on the follow list, but honestly, I think there's really no reason to. It's an open world RPG fantasy game, not coming from a AAA publisher or developer who's known for screwing you over with open world fantasy games. So this might be something like a new Witcher style game, or a new even Skyrim style of game. I want to play Elementals. That's my main goal right now, is just play Elementals. This guy is driving me crazy.
Ha! You call that?
He's just shuffling in more copies of his cards into the deck. He's somehow stolen all my characters. Yeah, Greedfall I think might go straight to the wish list. Yeah, might as well, because frankly by the time I get around to having money to buy something like Greedfall, I will have either watched a quick look on it or something else. But the more intelligent thing would be to put it on the follow list and then do some research and then wait till I see some quick looks. Although frankly, even putting any faith in quick looks at this point is kind of crazy on my part. There's really no reason why I should do that. Alright. This,
I'll be just like you.
I should have played this first. And this. And then this. And then this. He's got like 40 cards in his deck. And I've got 10 cards in my deck. Moving on, Gamersutra has an article. A camera hack 5 years later has revealed PT's ghost is legitimately always just off screen. I don't know what you really take from this story. She actually attaches to the player's back as soon as you get the flashlight. Here I demonstrate how you can see some strange shadows, then lock the camera in place and walk forward. She's always there following you. So, yeah, okay. 5 years in though, this might be true, this might not be true. This could be completely made up and faked. And what does it really matter? As far as strange shadows on the wall, I didn't notice anything like that.
I wonder.
But yeah, whatever. Let's see. So here's the camera hacker. And yeah, she's apparently just always set to your back, and that's probably an interesting idea as far as like that's probably an interesting way to create shadows, but then it's probably not a super effective way to create shadows anyways, because why have the textured character in its totality following instead of just a low polygon version of that, or a pre-rendered low polygon version. It's not like ray tracing is enabled. Ray tracing didn't even exist when PT happened, so any kind of shadows or reflective technology I don't think needs to be fully textured, since you're just talking lightness and darkness.
We must band together, united for Dalaran. We must band together, united for Dalaran.
I've got more left in me.
Let's see. Alright. Destroy a minion, summon 2 instead. Draw some cards. Discover a spell. Freeze a minion. Kill this. Play this.
Unity, precision, perfection.
Do this.
Primitive.
Job's done.
TechCryptor has an article here. Bayonetta and Bayonetta 2 are being delisted from Europe and Japan and Japanese Wii U eShop. I'm surprised that there still is a Wii U eShop in Europe and Japan more than anything else. Let's see. I guess the thing is, though, why would you even want to buy that for the Wii U? If you're still playing with the Wii U, somehow you got suckered into that. Like, come over to the Switch, and then you can easily get Bayonetta 1 and 2 on the Switch. Or you could come to PC and get Bayonetta 1 at least on the PC. One more elemental, so we'll do one more game. not really winning here, so there's not a good reason to be playing ranked, but whatever. Yeah.
Jaina versus Jaina.
Yeah, I don't know why I'd want to play it on the Wii U.
Oh,
Meanwhile,
it is on.
I'm fairly certain that the Wii had Bayonetta 1 and maybe Bayonetta 2, so you could get the disc-based version of that, or you probably could get the disc-based version of Bayonetta 1 and 2 for the Wii U, if such a thing ever existed. I can't even really say for certain that such a thing existed. Moving on, TechRaptor has an article, Post-Climate Change Adventure, the Climate Trail is now available for free. So, I guess this is the Oregon Trail with climate change themes. You can apparently play it at this website. It seems like it is probably more of a propaganda piece. Not that I deny climate change by any means. It's pretty obvious that it is happening. But does that mean I really want to get preached at in the middle of a game? Particularly when a lot of this stuff is not stuff that I could in any way control. I mean, honestly, unless you want me to go and seek out the CEOs and drag them to jail, the CEOs of corporations that are polluting, which is mostly people in China, let's face it, dumping trash in the ocean and burning coal and burning banned substances in the air and things like that. Yeah, there's very little a United States or a Westerner can do to affect climate change. Me recycling my trash helps such an infinitesimally small amount that there's not really a reason to get upset about it. If we are all going to just die due to climate change, then we might as well enjoy the last few days we have, since we can't really change it. The Brazilian fires in a lot of ways shows that too, is that it's not that one person one rancher in Brazil went and burned down and cleared the forest. It's that there was a encouragement and lack of political desire to stop many ranchers from burning and clearing the forest. In fact, there was an encouragement that the ranchers clear the forest. So it starts at a massive level of just the right people being in charge of countries, the right policies being enforced, and without that governing happening, an individual has very little chance to stop them or do anything to affect it. Destroy a minion, summon 2 to replace it to some cost. Right.
I don't have enough mana.
Okay. In the turn. TechRaptor has the same article, a little over 5 years later, and PT has a new secret discovered. This really is an example of just people being too obsessed with PT at this point. I liked PT fine. I made several videos, covering PTs. There's been 2 projects to try to recreate PT, which really haven't gone anywhere. There was a Minecraft project or 2 to recreate PT that I think did succeed, and I covered those, but I mean, at that point, it's just like, stop talking about it. You've boiled yourself down to a Star Wars fan that's still talking about A New Hope 9 movies later, 9+ movies later. Or in a similar way, Deadly Premonition is coming out, and Deadly Premonition is clearly inspired by Twin Peaks. Stop talking about Twin Peaks. That movie that TV series, and it had a movie, came out in the
You think you can take me?
yeah, Twin Peaks came out like in the 80s. For as much as you love it, it's time to move on. Things have changed, things have improved. Moving on, myself, TechRaptor has an article. Unrail, the co-op railroad builder, is out in early access. This looks like an 8-bit pixely piece of garbage. Co-op railroad game in general does not sound like a good, intelligent combination. It's, to me, sounds like it is really just somebody rolled a bunch of dice and made a random combination of words. So it's an infinitely generating railroad that you have to build. The concept here is actually a little bit more thought out than I thought it would be, but certainly Unrailed does not look like it's worth anything. They want $16.99 for Steam. That's ridiculously expensive. And clearly this is just an advertisement being hidden as a article.
I'll be just like you.
So, how much is this? This is a 2-mana card. So if I was to try to have some other 2-mana cards in this deck that I could turn into Sorcerer's Apprentice, I really don't have that. So, yeah. The strategy of this deck does not make as much sense as I think it should. Probably because I'm missing a few key cards that I should have. Right. This is cheaper here.
Arena's full. Beat it.
And then
Me?
Tiger punch!
this,
Tiger punch!
this, and that. Then end the turn. Gamma Sutra has an article. Drive Time has grabbed $11 million in funding for voice-powered games for drivers. That sounds like a really, really bad idea. I don't care how well you think you can get around the distracted driver item concept. You can't get around it. They've done studies that like phone modes connecting to the car's system. While they help a little bit, they definitely do increase your distraction. The argument they're trying to make here is a ridiculous argument that there is some way to take out a person's attention and it not end up with them being more distracted. And so they're trying to make voice quiz games. It's just not gonna work. It's not a smart. It's not something that you can do. You're not going to be able to succeed with that. And the last thing I think the video game industry needs is yet another controversy and yet another backlash. I could easily see that states implement a no playing voice games or no playing any kind of games law, even though they already have distracted driving laws already implemented. I would not be surprised if they just a kind of showboat did something like that. Right. I guess this works.
Our home, our tombs. Our home, our tombs.
Arena's full. Beat it.
There we go. That worked pretty well. TechRaptor has an article here. Assassin's Creed Odyssey is getting its final Lost Tale of Greece. This is I think the last bit of DLC that they're gonna give out for free. I'm not sure if they're gonna do any more DLC at all. I would assume that Assassin's Creed Odyssey has run its length, although it would be a little bit weird for them not to support it some more, considering they haven't even shown a new Assassin's Creed game in development, which that would be the next thing I would want to see is where's the next Assassin's Creed going? Because if they've gone Egypt and then they've gone Greece, then the next thing would be to move it a little bit further ahead for the times of the Romans, and probably dance around any Jesus elements too much, but they kind of have to do some of that.
Someday I'll be just like you.
Let's see.
Time runs out on me.
And what do we want to do?
I'm ready.
Poison. Yeah.
Unity, precision, perfection.
TechRaptor says Assassin's Creed Odyssey is available right now for the PS4, Xbox One, and PC. All of these updates have been or will be added for free, and you can buy the Discovery Tour Ancient Greece on Uplay for $19.99 as a standalone expansion. Yeah, I doubt very many people are still playing Assassin's Creed Odyssey though. It would be interesting to say the least if it turns out that that is somehow a Game of the Year contender. I don't see how that would break down and work that way.
I don't have enough mana. I'm ready.
Like,
Job's done.
yeah, I doubt anybody would consider it for this year. I believe it was probably considered and even maybe given some Game of the Year awards last year. It is weird though that Ubisoft hasn't announced anything. The thing I guess is they've got to get Watch Dogs 2, now Watch Dogs 3 out, and so since this is a Watch Dogs year, I guess as soon as Watch Dogs comes out and is received, the next big trade show, they'll start leaking out bits of information. And if they aren't going to take the Assassin's Creed forward into the Roman times or into that region, you get into some weird elements there. Like, they're kind of running out of time frames they could set things in, and they could jump around though, too. It wouldn't be too big of a problem, frankly, to set something in the time of Altair, in just a completely different region.
Job done.
Yeah. But I don't know what other regions you would want to set things into where you're not gonna get really weird. Like, you could try to set it in Australia, but I don't think too many people would care. You can't really set a main game in China. They don't want to set one in Japan, or I think pretty much any other time. You don't want to set one in Vietnam in the middle of the Vietnam War. I think that would be insane. So
I'm ready.
World War II you could do, certainly, and they should go to World War II at some point. It might as well be the next game. World War I would work too. Modern times don't really work, and I don't think they really fixed anything that would make modern times work, because you still have the gun problem, which World War I and World War II would have the gun problem also, and you have the watchdog problem. So yeah, I feel like at this point they've got maybe one or two more locations before they start double dipping and we start seeing things in overlapping time frames in different areas. Odyssey, for instance, during that time frame, there's not really a good reason why there couldn't be something else happening in Egypt during the Odyssey
One's
time,
out on me.
or in the Middle East somewhere during Odyssey's time. But then you also run into the problem of Assassin's Creed really just not being what it used to be. So I don't even know what you're gonna get that is an Assassin's Creed game. Let's see. Whenever my minion is attacked, summon a copy of it. Okay. So this is 12, so he should win right now. And what could I have done to prevent that? Not a lot. Moving on, TechRaptor has an article. The first Rage 2 expansion, Rise of Ghost, arrives September 2019. I'm a little surprised that there hasn't been some kind of patch that came out for Rage 2, but I don't think that there was a major complaints about Rage 2 either. So I think the game kind of runs fine. It's just kind of a generic, boring game. There's a new weapon coming out with this expansion, a new ability, and a new vehicle. It's probably not going to change the game's reception by much at all. So, yeah. I managed to both avoid playing the Mad Max game and Rage 1, which I was going to try to play one of those two games before Rage 2 came out, and that didn't happen. Well, this is a good point to break up this recording, so as always, I ask you to like, share, subscribe, comment, and watch every second of my videos. If you want to friend or follow me on any social media sites, there's a whole bunch of links down below in the description box. And if you want to support me even further, there's a link to Patreon, or you can friend me on Steam and gift me a game off my wishlist. Thank you for watching. Have a good evening.
The tavern's always open.
Hey everybody, this is Rydo and we're back to another recording of Hearthstone. Today is Monday, September 29th. We are on the European account. I don't think we need to do the Tavern Brawl for any of them, so I may or may not bother to do any of them. I don't have a reroll here, but we have play Druid cards and win 2 games with Druid and play minions that cost 5 or more. We only need to get 2 things done. Yeah. So if I'm not in the middle of a game on the Asian account, then I'll just be done with that. It seems like, and I kind of thought that this might happen, we are probably not streaming live right now. What happened there is, to make a long story short, YouTube is screwing around with the live control room, and they have a new beta live control room that I went and looked at, and it doesn't seem like it's particularly any better or more useful. In fact, it's ridiculously odd because they are specifically going with a black theme for the live control room, whereas the YouTube Studio beta, which should be which the live streaming control room should be a part of, is in a white theme. So they don't even have, artistically, they're not on the same page. And I know that these are probably completely different departments working on completely different things, but it should look like YouTube is all on the same page as far as what their artistic vision is going to be.
What would Uther do?
If I was the programmer developing it, I'd be like, I don't care if it's light or dark. We should have both themes, frankly. But the inconsistency there screams. Anyways, I was looking at that. It looks like they changed the stream key for me again, which they did before. Part of this is in part because it sets up these video files that aren't video files, and then it kind of leaves them hanging. So I deleted those video files, and clearly I don't need to delete those video files ever. But yeah. So yeah, well, I'm trying to live stream to YouTube. I don't think that it's actually making it to my channel, which sucks, but whatever. Let's just move forward and we'll see what we can do. I guess I'll throw the video up. Yeah, the best thing I guess to do would be to throw the video up after the recording if it's showing out there. Oh, these are things I can't really fix live. Meanwhile, we have a decent amount of news, but not a ton, frankly, so let's just start going through it. There's not a lot to set up before on that. So TechRaptor has an article, Remnant from the Ashes Adventure Mode and Lido's Lab is coming in a free update. I've heard good things about Remnant from the Ashes as kind of a Destiny style game done better. By the way, it's $39.99. So I'm not logged into my Steam account, so I won't know if it's already on my follow list or wish list, but it should probably be at this point on my wish list. On the other hand, it is worth speculating at least that Remnant Through the Ashes might not be amazingly as fun in single player as it is online co-op, so I have to kind of be concerned about that. Also, if it's getting free updates, then it might be better to play later. I ran into a similar issue like in Darkest Dungeon, where Darkest Dungeon constantly was constantly changing itself and slightly improving itself. So there was this desire to put it off a little bit longer and not specifically
Place to hide.
play Darkest Dungeon day one. Next we have a game here that's a bunch of Asian characters. That's an RPG Maker game. English not supported, $3.99, Japanese only. Oh. So it's a cheap Japanese RPG Maker game. We don't see a lot of those, and I'm glad for that. Alright. There we go. Let's see. Next we have a game on Steam called Main Competition, which looks like it's an adventure visual novel style game using blurry real world images. So that's pretty low effort. I could see doing real world images and writing a story around it, but the images would have to be very, very high quality. $3.99, English only. Yeah, nothing here. It looks interesting at all. Okay. Can I do anything else? I can do this. I can do this. Replace all the wisps with tutu characters. And see, next turn I can just summon, give them all Death Rattle Treant again. And I can play this card first. Maybe.
For master we take.
Yeah. Alright, or I could potentially win right now. Let's see, because this would be 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30. Yeah. I do believe this is enough damage to just win right now, so here. Maybe my count was a little off.
For the wild.
Nope. With that spell, they can just win. And overwhelm them. That's a interesting strategy. That's probably how the druid is always supposed to be played. The idea of overwhelming them with nature-like creatures. Let's see, we're 1/3 of the way done almost of 2 of the daily quests. A new engine core has come to RetroPie. So Solaris, an ARPG game engine, has come to RetroPie. Let's see. Solaris has been part of the RetroPie since version 1.49. I cannot read any of this. Let's take some advantage here and zoom in. 1.45. So, Legend of Zelda Mystery of Solaris DX, XD, and SE. I've never heard of Solaris though. I assume that Solaris is like a custom. These Zelda games are custom versions made in recent time. But it might be that Solaris is that satellite service that Nintendo had in Japan that you could only play games through, like, no, it wasn't through hotels. There's two services. There was some special versions of games that you could play through hotels, and then there was also a satellite service that Nintendo had in Japan where you could only download parts of that. I don't think Solaris is either one of these. Like, on Solaris's main game, let's see, ARPG apparently stands for Action RPGs. I should know that, and I'm glad to finally learn that. I've always been in my head wondering, does that mean Asian RPG or augmented reality? No, it doesn't mean augmented reality, definitely.
What shall we hunt? I fight.
Let's see. So, Solaris is a 2D game engine written in C++ and execute games made in Lua. Lua being a lesser known programming language on top of for game design, I would say, more than anything else. Playable on multiple platforms. So games are Legend ZSXD Episodes 2, The Legend of Zelda Mirkia's Chess. Let's see, Le Defeo Zelda, Legend of Zelda Mystery of Solaris. So clearly, Vegan on a Desert Island, Ocean Heart, Legend of Zelda Link's Awakening, A Link to the Dream. Alright, so it seems like Solaris is the place for several Zelda-themed fan games. That is how I would break it down.
Got one! Got one! I fight.
Job done.
And if we go down to the download part of this, let's see. Yeah, you can apparently just download it for Windows and run it as a core engine. The thing I would say here that's weird is Solaris is coming out for the RetroPie, but why is it not just coming out for LibRetro? Maybe it already is a part or a core of LibRetro. That would be the thing you'd want it to do, is integrate into LibRetro and work with that infrastructure so that it could then be backported to several other things.
What to do?
I think this is the right move.
From its bonds.
And then this is the right move. What? After you cast to choose one, add a copy of both choices to your hand. Alright, so do that. And then
I fight. Got one!
that's not as good as the other old card that would just do both things.
Time waits for no one.
So yeah, Solaris looks slightly interesting. I'll have to consider that, I guess.
I concede.
Although, next time I work with the RetroPie build will probably be a very long time. Like, in all honesty, I was trying to build a RetroPie, not so much a RetroPie, but Raspberry Pi computer and the physical box that it goes in, and I got distracted, frankly, a year ago, and I don't think I'm gonna get around to finishing it ever. Distracted being a euphemism from actually hurting my hand from all this sawing through bolts and cutting wood and just trying to make it work and having trouble having it work. The physical constraints are the problems I'm running into. and I need to get back to that and finish it. But
versus
in the side time, I started a couple other quests that I'd like to get finished too. I got even limiting myself down to a couple of side projects or one side project a year is really difficult to accomplish that depending on my level of ambition thing. Let's see. Just because I have so much time I spend on playing Hearthstone more than anything. Playing Hearthstone, trying to run a YouTube channel, trying to somehow reach through the dim dark hope that running a YouTube channel could actually be a profitable career path. Anyways, moving on, Gamatsu has an article. A new Umuhari Kawase game has been announced for the PS4 and Switch. This is surprising because I didn't think that they were going to make any more. The game's full title hasn't been out. The above image only shown the Umuhari Kawase part of the logo. This might be a bundle, but it would be weird that yet another game is coming out, because this is like the 4th game in the series, and clearly it's succeeding by somebody's metric enough for them to keep on making them. But I really think that they should be careful and not flood the market. Let's see.
I fight.
Next, we have a game on Steam here called Hellsplit Arena. It's mostly negative. It looks slightly interesting visually. So the question would be, why is it negative? If this is actually a VR game, which it might be, this is probably the most detailed and realistic looking VR game I've ever seen. At least in the trailer. So perhaps the performance is terrible, and that might be the problem in a nutshell, is that actually VR games are so demanding on computers that you can't actually do any modern reasonable graphics on them. So Hellsplit Arena is $24.99. It is a VR game. It requires VR. It's English with full audio, so let's look at the reviews. Graphics wise, the game looks amazingly, but other than that, the game quickly falls into a downhill spiral. The thing is, I was so excited by the game, but now that I've tested it, I feel so utterly disappointed and just wish it was better. Let's see. Snap turning is a problem. Blood FX is a problem. The physics in general. The enemies is a problem. The sounds. 2 out of 10 is the most helpful review there. That's a shame. I would like to see Hellsplit Arena be a new standard for graphics in games, but not a new standard in gameplay mechanics for VR games. Because yeah, this really looks like a real game, and it's from somebody who hasn't made anything else. So they tried. It almost certainly that boils down to a case of they put too much money in the graphics department and didn't put enough money into the game core loop and the game mechanics and the physics department, just all the other departments in general, which is just bad management. Moving on, TechRaptor has an article, 6 games from PAC West PAX West 2019 to add to your wish list. Let's see what these games are. No Straight Roads Rocks. I may have heard of that game. Mega Man Zero ZX Legacy Collection delivers what you expect. Or Mega Man Collections. Which I wouldn't be surprised if I never get around to playing any Mega Man game. Windjammers 2, which people will be talking about Windjammers 2 like crazy, so definitely won't miss that. Journey to a Savage Planet looks interesting. And what else? Monster Prom 2, Monster Camp makes... I believe Monster Prom 2 would be the sequel, would be Jesse Cox, the YouTube streamer, which, as infrequently as they do the co-optional podcast now, it's kind of surprising that the most recent co-optional podcast didn't have him in it, and I don't think the one before that had him in it, and I'm not sure the one before that had him in it, so it's been potentially like 3 months since he's been on the co-optional podcast. And the most recent one had a guy that... This might be a case of a misperception on my part. Like, there were 2 guests. One guest immediately complained about not being... jokingly complained, but complained nonetheless about not being on the show before this point. And then what they... Let's see. Then the other guest talked a lot about how his channel is about teaching people to be respectful, and that the guy was into studying neuroscience in college. And frankly, he just came off as a pompous jerk, and I was like 20 minutes in and I'm like, man, I cannot listen to this guy. And maybe it's because I in part attributed his complaint, the complaint of the other guy, to him, and that made me think, oh, well, this guy was disrespectful the second he started on this show, and then he's going to talk about respect. But in general, anybody who uses the phrase respect or talks about respect ever is a jerk. It is such a stupid conversation to ever have in any scenario whatsoever. Because respect means that you're going to listen or give deference to somebody who almost never actually deserves it. That's why so many bosses talk about being respected, is because they know they aren't and shouldn't be, really. It's just a dumb conversation to ever ask. A smart boss, in my opinion, should not care if anybody respects them, as long as they listen and realize that they will be fired if they don't listen. If that's all respect really means to you, then I guess that's respect, but usually it's they want pomp and circumstance around them. They want to be called sir or ma'am. They want to be treated better in every scenario, or given deference in every scenario, and not treated as an equal human being, and that just does not fly in my book. But also, on a bigger picture, I don't know, as infrequently as a co-optional happens, I guess I'll still listen to it as a podcast, but at this point, it's just yet another podcast that I think I'm going to stop listening to. Where am I mentally with YouTubers making video games? I think it's unethical, certainly, to be a video game critic and then jump the line and create a video game. We've seen it happen though. PewDiePie has done it. Angry Video Game Nerd has done it. Several others have done it. It's unethical because it brings a YouTuber towards that cronyism that shouldn't exist in the video game world, but exists quite a bit. That being said, I don't think that would really stop me from criticizing a game. So I think Monster Prime 2 is probably on something that would go on the fall list. There are so rarely actually good Western visual novels that this is one to consider. But it needs to be considered not in a vacuum, so if I am going to cover Monster Prom, I need to cover it and compare it to something like Clannad, or one of the major Japanese visual novels, not in a vacuum where Monster Prom is being reported as being the first visual novel to ever exist, or the only good visual novel to ever exist, which would be a false statement by far. Next game they have that they're recommending, Foregone Features, which I guess the game is called Foregone. It has responsive combat. Looks like a beat-em-up brawler of some sort. Although this is so blinding that this is a really terrible screenshot. So here's a interview. Does this have actual footage of the gameplay? Alright, that looks a lot better in motion, but I can definitely see how if you're not careful. It looks like a Metroidvania platformer game with shooting. That sounds slightly interesting. So a lot of games that are in early access are soon to be out from PAX West. There is something to be said about the big stage shows and the coverage, I guess, by just mainstream journalists and video game journalists in general, as far as the PAX shows, because you at best get an article like this, and that's kind of it. Where I think that there needs to be a big stage presentation with a lot of trailers, so that more people get hyped, so that the news gets out there a little bit more than it does, because it really isn't getting mentioned by any of the other people. PAX West is hugely overcast by other terrible events that happened during that time, and instead, at the end of PAX West, instead of like the giant bombcast talking about what happened at PAX West or what they saw at PAX West, that they're talking about these other events. So yeah, I don't think PAX has the clout in the advertisement down yet like E3 does. Whereas if a game is on a main stage at E3, people know that game exists, at least for 5 minutes or so, until they forget that game exists. Let's see. Next we have a game on Steam called Marvel Odyssey, which I did see a Marvel game that looked interesting about a week ago. This is a different one. And the danger with all these Marvel games is that they are just kind of asset flippy games that don't play well. On the other hand, this is very pretty looking, and it's like a clear marble with just a little bit of an accent in the middle of it, instead of being a solid sphere. So there's more visuality to this. So I'll put this on the fall list, but they want $29.99 in early access? No. Nobody's gonna pay $30 for a Marvel game. If this was a $5 game, I'd consider it, but that's an insane. You've just priced yourself out of the market, Marvel Odyssey. So forget Marvel Odyssey. That is way too much. I've got all these cards that would buff up minions, but I've got no minions on the field. Let's see. Next, we have a game called The Last Regiment. I had to. I wanted to say Remnant there, but I guess that is Regiment. This looks like it's a top-down strategy game, perhaps a little bit more simplistic with some deck building concept here. This feels like a mobile game advertisement looking at it. Like, and there's a lot of hiding of the gameplay and a blue highlight over the. That's probably because I selected something. And that, yeah, ignore the blue highlight. That was my fault. Now this looks like an iPad game, unfortunately. Early access, $19.99 English only. $19.99 for this game is starting a little too expensive also. Let's see.
Time waits for no one. For the wild.
I'm just gonna get rid of all these and wait for next turn. I'm gonna have to be careful here or I'm gonna lose. This, I suppose, is a big story depending or not you play World of Warcraft Classic. Gamma Citrus, this article, Blizzard's World of Warcraft Classic hit with weakened DDoS attacks. They seem to be coming fairly consistently and very frequently. The fact that they don't have protection from DDoS attacks is confusing, to say the least. Let's see. Yeah, so yeah, I don't know why Blizzard isn't spending more money to protect their World of Warcraft classics. Overall, I think it's a medium reception on World of Warcraft classics because people, and they said this even before World of Warcraft Classic came out, is people didn't know what they were really asking for, and clearly Blizzard didn't bother to try and figure out what experience they could give that would actually be appreciated versus what is being asked for, because sometimes you just don't deliver on what people want, you deliver on what people actually would be happy with. And I think what people wanted was to go through the quests and the storylines of classic World of Warcraft with the modern conveniences, and I think the modern conveniences part is the part that they kind of forgot.
Free your mind from its bonds.
Anyways, moving on. Gears 5, not Gears of War anymore, just Gears 5 is out on Steam. It's mostly positive. I saw a quick look of it, and it seemed like Act 2 puts you in kind of this icy world that's kind of an open world that is sort of empty until you get to a quest, and then you jump into a load zone. So it's kind of like a connecting hallway that, instead of being a small hallway, is a rather large area. You're not playing as Marcus. He's talking to you on the radio, it seems. You're playing mostly as this girl with a necklace. At this point, I don't know the story really of Gears 5 or the Gears of War universe at all. You can see Marcus Phoenix is pretty old looking. So it's going to be weird. In particular, I believe Dave Bautista is playing the Doctor there. it's going to be weird to try to play Gears 5 on PC, having only played a small portion. There you have this wind sail device that you use to transport yourself. So yeah, having only played maybe a portion of Gears of War 1, or maybe 3 is what I played, I'm like so far behind. And I feel like the story is probably a little bit more consistent in Gears than Halo. Because the story in Halo, I know. It's like, there's Halos, there are enemies, you kill the enemies. Gears of War, as a series, there's more to it than that. I'm fairly certain. It's a little bit more complicated. So this is a game for me in particular that will go on the wish list, but it's going to be an awkward experience. I probably would have to read the Wikipedia articles on just everything that's happened up until this point. Let's see. I don't think I want to try and get this other daily quest done. I don't think I have really a deck that could play things that cost 5 or more, so I'm just going to skip over to the Asian account and we'll just start playing that right now. Yeah. It will be also, I suppose, a bit of a weird experience if you are well up with all of the Gears of War games and yet you decide to move to PC. You probably will have a better experience, but
Sit a while and relax.
it's not like Gears 4 came out just a couple years ago. Gears 4, I think, was 3 or 4 years ago, so some catch-up. There would be some catch-up elements to that, too. Game, are you gonna crash here? Taking your sweet time. Priest and Warlock games. And we are in the middle of a game here, so we might as well play this all the way through. We're playing as Elsie Starseeker, which probably won't count as Priest or Warlock. Didn't return, so I'm going to copy this minion. That might work. Do I have a lot of cards that will have Death Rattle in them? No. Let's take this. I don't think any of those cards are particularly useful. This card used to be really useful. I haven't seen anybody play it in a long time though.
I need help. It is time to round up the League of Explorers.
Next we have a game on Steam that's a bunch of Asian characters and translated to Wily Beast and Weakest Creature. This looks like another one of these Toho Project games, I think. Still have yet to figure out what they are.
Class is in session.
Anime girls in a shoot 'em up game, for lack of a better term. Still not interested in bullet hell shoot 'em ups though, so English not supported, $14.99, Japanese only. Clearly there is a major fan base of this, or there's just a lot of people that have the opinion that it sells. Let's see. Next we have a game on Steam, Solitaire Match 2, Cards, Valentine's Day. This looks like a low effort solitaire game, even by low effort solitaire game standards, because it's not widescreen and it is some of these standard just like flat background elements. Yeah, this interface wise looks terrible. It's discounted to $2.99, English, French, German, and Russian. Yeah, not a game that would make it to the follow list.
This be our neck of the woods.
Job's done.
So apparently there was more story to this than I remember, but TechRaptor has this article. The voxel action game Cube World breaks its long silence and gets a release window. Cube World being a Minecraft clone, for lack of a better term. So it will launch hopefully around the end of September or October 2019. Cube World was originally launched in alpha back in 2013, so you're talking 6 years ago. A messy period of sporadic updates followed, after which the game fell silent. I haven't heard anything from the developer, I assume this is a fake name, Wolfram von Funk, since mid-2014, when he released a video detailing the game's questing system. So he went silent for nearly 5 years, which at this point the question would be, is it even the same person? You know, going quiet for 5 years, that's a bachelor's degree in college amount of time. It's just like, I did something completely different. I went and got a job for 5 years. Basically anything could have happened at that time frame. So this should work relatively well. What do I want to do? 4. I don't want to die though, so I'm just going to end the turn here. And that means we'll double this up. But they're all going to die in the same turn, so I'm going to have to think of something here. Give a friendly minion +1/+1. And gotta just do as much damage as possible. Okay. Let's see, what else can we do? We can play this. And we can do this. And then we can do that. And we can do that. And we can do that.
Round up the leg! Round up the leg! Round up the leg!
So that gives it more health for a while, so if I can just continue to do that. I don't think that there's a way to do that though, so we'll do that instead.
Free of that blasted tower!
Alright. I've got this though, so just do that. That. We won. So yeah, Cube World. One of the thousands upon thousands of games that have come to early access on Steam and then not really been released in a reasonable amount of time. Like, so it says Sir Finley's been added to your deck. What does Sir Finley do? Oh, it's just that card. Okay. Destroy a minion, summon 4 bees that attack it. This is not a bad card, but I'm not sure I'd use it very often, where this is probably a little bit better.
Help me find the other explorers. They are ever so hard to keep track of.
Next we have a game on Steam called Monster Planet, which probably is an asset flip game from the looks of the video. And man, nothing wants to load today. So I heard
Class is in session.
some conversation talking about how the loading of games these days might be compression or de-encryption of elements of the game, whether that is the visual elements or the level elements or such, and that might be part of why things like Control still took a long time, even though I had an SSD loading into it. So I might be CPU limited more than I thought, and I might be seeing it in the loading and unloading a lot more than
Why are you fighting those creatures?
I'm taming them. Damn boy.
what you would expect. Also, I've heard that many old bad games are programmed to only use one CPU core to do any of that, so there's no efficiency in that. The core frequency setting hasn't massively increased. So even though you might get a 5 gigahertz processor, you're getting a 5 gigahertz processor that has 8, 10, 12 cores in it, and each of those cores are roughly only still 800 megahertz or something like that. Whereas a Pentium 3 was probably only about 300 megahertz. So the difference though is a Pentium 3 at most had 2 cores in it. So that they've done a lot of shenanigans to move the numbers up a lot faster than they actually have moved up. Let's see this. And then this. And then in the turn. So yeah, this game Monster Planet, which does not want to load this final image, looks like it's an asset flip of a Griffin in kind of a generic open world. It's probably the same troll developer, I would guess, that made the Beholder game. This is 99 cents, English only. Definitely not something that I would put on my storefront if I was running things. But looking at the developer between Monster Desert and Monster Planet, it's the same name, it's the same general concept, but it's a different developer name.
I must safeguard the land.
What would have happened if I silenced this guy? Well, then you just wouldn't switch turns at and attack a random enemy. I doubt silence would have worked. I was the guess, but whatever. I should try it, see what happens. Next we have a game on Steam here called Desert Lost. This clearly is a troll developer. He has made fake developer names, fake publisher names, and he's just taken the same concept and bought some assets, or one assumes bought some assets, and done the same thing. This time Scorpions. Why sell separate games like this though? You could have had one game at least that had 3 enemy types. English full audio on this, 99 cents. Yeah. So we've got a new player on the field, it seems. Specifically built around the concept of flooding the Steam marketplace with garbage games. Next game we have on Steam is called Urban Riots, and it seems to me like this is the exact same developer again. Like a group of people didn't all get together and say, within the same day, let's put in a bunch of low effort games with like this. 99 cents again, English full audio. Summon a random flying minion that died. Discover a minion that died. Shuffle a copy of this into your deck. End the turn. TechRaptor load. Next we have an article from TechRaptor. Pokemon Masters sees over $26 million in 1 week of revenue. I've been seeing a lot of YouTube ads for Pokemon Masters and skipping them. I do think Pokemon Masters is an interesting game. I'm not sure it's the game to beat all games though. More attack, and I think we can win now. There we go.
Thank you. This one's learned his manners.
Then he can help us against our new enemies.
Next we have a game on Steam called Wizard Battle, which has some MS Paint looking graphics. This seems like this is a simplistic puzzle game. Seems like every time the wizard falls down, he takes a heart of damage until you get him off the screen and his health refills. It's kind of a funny concept that probably goes nowhere, frankly. It seems like you have to handcraft a lot of puzzles that would turn out to be rather repetitive very quickly. They want $3.74 for this, English only. Yeah, it's kind of a funny concept that might be fun to play during a load screen, but you would need a lot more to it. You need more items and pickups other than hearts, which that was the one thing it seemed like you could pick up, and you would need a desire to make a lot of puzzles. And then you probably would have to do some tweaks on the delivery of those puzzles too, so people don't just burn through it really, really quick, and some way to break things up.
The fate of the world depends on us.
Next we have an article from TechRaptor, and I haven't seen this game, but whatever. Listed Steam game Diablo Island is filled with stolen assets from Blizzard. We'll see if we can find this game on Steam.
Class is in session.
Diablo Island with a backward D. Let's see. It's not unheard of. Like, Valve's not good in a lot of ways. So, at like detecting, or really, they don't have any benefit to want to accuse a company of having stolen assets from Diablo, I assume. Everything in this trailer does not look like it's stolen from Diablo. Or, like, stolen in what way? Was it copied to look exactly like Diablo, or is it stuff that was straight out just ripped out of the game. It's weird for TechRaptor to make these accusations without some confirmation, and it's wrong, I would guess, to put this put an article out without contacting Activision Blizzard, which would be more than happy to sue people, quite frankly, if they were stealing their assets. It's not like Activision Blizzard is not litigious when it needs to be. So making an accusation without confirming, was this actually content that was licensed?
Job's done.
This does to me look like it is a cheap Chinese game. It does to me look like it is heavily inspired by Diablo, possibly to the point of copyright infringement, but I don't know if that means it really is full of stolen assets. This is labeled as planned release date of September 2019, which is really just another example of Steam allowing people to have store pages without being vetted, English and Chinese. So as far as we know, there's a big question about whether they've even uploaded anything other than these screenshots and these videos. They could be claimed as copyright infringement, even if the game actually is full of Blizzard's Diablo content.
Go away.
So yeah,
What will you do to save the world?
Later.
it's weird, to say the least, to write an article like this when you could have gotten a better article and a bigger article. You just say, hey, we found this game. You contact Activision Blizzard, and you get at least a generic response back from them saying, we do not tolerate copyright infringement and pursue it to the full extent of the law. But you get a little bit more story there than just saying, I, as the writer of this article on TechRaptor, accuse this game of committing a crime without really having the evidence or the proof or a vested interest in proving yourself. It's a dangerously slanderous article for not even a lot of clickbait. This next game I can't show you because of the name itself. The screenshots are mostly of one anime girl in a bikini that you see the back of her head, and so it's not even interesting to look at, shooting a gun in an arena. But the name is offensive and not YouTube friendly, so I can't even say the name of the game. Regardless, it's just another example of a low effort game trying to sell on anime sex or sexual intrigue. So those are still allowed on Steam, but I guess the difference there is those pre-bought assets are of characters that look at least moderately old. They don't have the Moe art style, which is clearly the thing that Valve seemed to have a problem with last time they actually got an official word out of Valve. Which was quite a while ago.
Basically Medivh.
Basically nothing like Medivh.
Gamma Sutra has an article, Unity addressables, it's never too big to fit. I think this probably is addressing memory in a programming article, which probably won't have much to do with most people. The bigger thought that I was having when I opened this article, though, is can you really efficiently and effectively make a game that looks like an Unreal game in Unity? I think the answer is probably no, unfortunately. I wish it was yes, but I don't think it is.
Free of that blasted tower! Behold! Look what I found!
This is the thing where you just have to have more health. And I see the beginning of the end of this news, so we're close to the end. Getting 2 recordings, that should be fine. Okay. Spells. Taunt, Reborn, restore 3 health. 3 and then 3.
This isn't Moonglade.
The rage. It claims me.
Scry more!
Next we have a game on Steam called Warcraft, which seems to be I don't even know if I really want to call it a platformer, or just a black and white shooter. Looks like a zoomed in version of something that could have been an NES or Super NES game.
Behold the tools of
It's
creation.
visually unappealing being in black and white with just red blood. It's going for kind of like a dark noir theme without really realizing that a dark noir theme doesn't work in a platforming shooting game. So there's $1.79 discounted English and Russian. Doesn't work. I'm not sure I'd really want to call it a Russian troll game, but it probably is, you know. At this point, if it's a Russian game, it very possibly is a Russian troll game. Let's see. This. And in return. Next we have a game on Steam called Stamp Boy, which looks like a platformer. And I kind of wish that there was a way that I could appreciate a game like this that looks like an NES game with a modern take on it. The jumping, the platforming here actually feels like it's well designed and there actually is a game here. But it is a hard sell. They have the little platforms that fall from Super Mario Brothers. A lot of this is inspired by Super Mario Brothers elements. You can see that. I guess I'll put this on the fall list because it looks like it plays really well. And if this was a shorter experience and a nostalgic experience for a Mario game that will never be on it would never be on a different platform, there might be something to this. $1.59 discounted, English and Chinese, full audio for both. Yeah, so this might be one of those rare examples where a Chinese stealing a concept / cloning a concept of Super Mario Land will come out to the benefit of the video game world in general, because Nintendo, let's face it, will never come to a PC platform, which is a shame. I'd really like to see them to come to PC, but it's not going to happen. And even if it did come out and happen, they wouldn't allow streamers to stream without claiming it or the copyright. So I still couldn't really stream it. Although they are getting better at that, so maybe 10 years down the line they'll actually be at a point where that makes more sense. Gamma Sutra has an article here. Celeste developers form a new studio called Extremely OK Games. Probably not the best name to give your company. Extremely OK. It's basically extremely mediocre games. And yeah, it's probably not the greatest name ever, but whatever. Like, it's hard to find names that aren't already taken and copyrighted for any business, so I totally get if your company name kind of sucks. But we'll see if Celeste can continue to make good games after Celeste, and I'm not even sure that I ever want to play Celeste, so I'm not sure I can't legitimately even say Celeste is a good game because I haven't played it and don't really want to play it. Let's see. Next, Gematsu has an article for the Switch. ESRB has rated Snack World the Dungeon Crawler Gold, which looks like a dungeon crawler game of mediocre quality from this screenshot. I imagine it won't be amazing, but if it's being rated by the ESRB, it's probably coming to the West, and that's if it's slightly interesting game that people liked, that might catch some people's attention. Honestly, if you were trying to own every game on the Switch, you could probably do a lot of well, if you probably would have quite a lot of them for all the digital versions, like thousands. I wouldn't be surprised if you're in the hundreds, maybe up to 1,000 games on the Switch. Way more by far than any memory card could hold. Anyways, next we have a game on Steam called Lilith M, which looks to me like it's a highly polished 3D platforming game. Maybe you're controlling or mimicking a robot's action so that there's a copying going on and you have to get both characters to their location. This looks like it's a Chinese high quality game. Wow, I don't think that's a fair phrase to coin. $3.99 English, Chinese, French. It probably is a Chinese game, and it does look slightly better quality than most. So again, I'll put it on the fall list. This is another one of those examples where it really would boil down to how many different room puzzles are there, or how well is it received. You can kind of tell that there isn't a lot of variety here. So it almost feels like it would have been better suited as a
This be our neck of the woods.
It'd probably be better suited as a mobile game than the
Job's done.
PC game. Next we have a game on Steam called The Lost Dungeon of Night. Let's skip through all of this.
Science overwhelmed.
Has a soft, slightly low polygon art style to it. Kind of color pigments that I wouldn't be super happy with. I was not expecting platforming in a dungeon looking game. This looks like it runs pretty badly. And it doesn't look like there's much to it. At some point you find an escape. So it's probably pretty short too. 59 cents discounted, English and Russian. Yeah, nothing impressive here. I don't see any enemies, I don't see any attack mechanic, I don't see any real gameplay other than platforming. Let's see. This, and this, and then end the turn. See, I don't know if I really need to do this or not. Because I'm still way ahead, and that's kind of all I need to do. Let's just wait until
Just like you.
next couple turns and he'll die from his own ability. Next we have a game on Steam called Memory Eater. I suppose we're probably getting close to the point where we start seeing some horror games coming out for Halloween. That probably should start happening. I don't think we're planning on seeing any major AAA horror games coming out though. AAA horror games don't even try to come out during Halloween though. Looks like it's a platformer with hand-drawn animation, and according to the tag, it's $1.79 discounted, English only. This one's so weird that there might be a game here, there might not. So, really would just come down to the reviews on it. Probably is super short an experience if I was to guess. And let's see. Let's go
The
that
end begins.
and do that. Let's see. Next game we have on Steam is called The Longest Love. This looks like an RPG Maker game. And oddly, every screenshot is inside what seems to be one or two rooms with no overworld and no gameplay is being shown at all. 84 cents discounted, English and Chinese. Yeah, I think this is probably a pretty cheap Chinese game, but still want to say they are getting better. I don't know if there's a better way to say this, but the Chinese games that are coming to Steam are getting the feeling like they actually are efforts at least up to the level of the trolls that just flood Steam with RPG Maker games. Now, the question I guess to ask is, were all of the developers of cheap RPG Maker games up until this point actually Chinese developers? And I doubt that's the case, but I wouldn't be surprised if some of them were. Okay. So there's nothing more I can do. But this will win the game for me. It can't do enough damage to defeat me.
I have an idea. Practice against the League of Evil.
Ooh, yes! Who are they again?
TechRaptor has the same article. Celeste developers form extremely okay games. Celeste Chapter 9 comes out next week, which is weird because I thought Celeste was a completely finalized game that wouldn't get any DLC. So I think I do own Celeste, but again, I don't know if I really want to go through the frustration of trying to beat it. So I definitely would want to play it. I would want to play it at the pinnacle of it being finished and not in some unfinished state, which is the problem with all games these days. And I've kind of forgotten that over the past month or so. It's like, oh yeah, all games kind of do this thing where they are completely unfinished.
The League of Explorers has returned, but we have attracted
I'm gonna
some
put myself
attention.
at 50-50 as to actually being able to beat this. Next we have a game on Steam called Okairi. Okairi? This doesn't feel like Japanese. Looking at it, even
Class is in session.
it's like Oak A E Oak A Erie probably is how it's pronounced, but 4 symbols for 6 letters. Doesn't make sense. It looks like it's probably a mediocre horror game. It's already mixed in its reviews. It's $2.69. Japanese full audio. Let's see what the reviews say as far as negative reviews. Very little visibility. Most of the time I don't know what I was doing. It gave me a headache. It took me like 10 minutes to find the house, even though I went through the door like 4 times. I just went through the houses and the girl mumbled some things about the home, but it was not scary, and I stopped playing because I got dizzy. It's a decent walking sim horror game, but the problem is that you can hardly see anything, so the graphics are just apparently terrible on it, and maybe dark screenshot syndrome is part of the problem there. So yeah, and if we look at this developer, they probably haven't made anything else, and if we look at this publisher, they've published several other games that are mixed or negative. So there's a consistency issue with this publisher, to say the least. Alright. This, and we'll keep these other 2. Can't all be winners. Tech Raptor has an article here. Drive Club still available to buy on the North American PSN a week after being delisted everywhere else. So maybe there was some licensing issue there. I don't think too many people care about Drive Club though. It wasn't a major success as far as racing games. And honestly,
Our plan has been set into motion.
making racing games is probably the worst decision you can make.
We will see about that.
Because you're just going to not have a good experience with racing games. You're going to spend too much money, or you're going to or you're not going to sell enough to cover how much money you spend. Yeah, it's kind of a both situation will probably happen unless you turn out to be really successful, which rarely happens in racing games because it's kind of a niche style of gameplay too. Like very few people spend the money that you'd like them to spend on racing games. Let's see. Do a little damage whenever I want to. Next we have a game on Steam called Mage Math, which looks like it's probably a low effort game to be sold to like schools or something, but graphics just don't look good. And I can't even really call it an asset flip because it looks like it all is original assets. It's just ugly. It's just really ugly. And that was kind of consistent with a lot of the educational software I saw when I was a kid. It's also at that premium price of $43.99. Do not be fooled, schools. Do not buy this garbage.
The end begins.
There's an extra bit of danger, frankly, trying to buy educational software compared to buying educational books or educational printed out type information, because those books will always work where software may stop working very quickly. One Windows update and then all of a sudden your software doesn't work, and that's been a problem for decades, and companies and schools have run into that like crazy. I heard a story of a school still using like Java Flash is like ridiculous that would be happening still. And that's why if you're going to go into educational software, you probably would want an HTML5 type program of some sort, something that is fairly certain to run on browsers in the next few decades. Like, if you made something for HTML version 1.0, it still kind of works. Only the plugins of like Shockwave Flash don't work. Or Java. Moving on, we have a game on Steam called Hodo, or Hoodoo, which seems to be a top-down strategy laser avoidance game. It's not super impressive visually. Looks like it's a stealth game. $5.39 discounted, English, Russian, Chinese, Korean. The language support scares me, definitely. But yeah, it's a laser avoidance game though. It's a laser avoidance stealth game. There's really nothing else to do here. This is not the kind of game I'd want to play consistently for any short amount of time. There are several other games I probably on Steam if I was going to play something like that. Right. I gotta kill this guy. We'll just try and run some control. TechRaptor has an article, Gears 5 Steam launch suspended over, quote, a specific issue, end quote. Let's see. The unspecified issue is forcing the team to suspend the game's release and any sales of pre-orders. I wonder what the specific issue is, though. Could be anything. One suggestion is China's censorship, which would totally be a valid suggestion, but there's no guarantee that that is the case. Another suggestion could be that it's just delayed because, well, the pre-ordering issue is the problem there. Like, they would not have halted pre-ordering if there wasn't a censorship issue. It's gotta be censorship. Like, if it was just a technical delay and they said we're gonna be a couple of weeks late to release in China, fine. You would just delay it and still take pre-orders. The most ironic thing would be that they didn't even start the process of being approved in China and just thought they could sell it as they do in other countries. But the idea that Microsoft would be so ignorant of that is ridiculous. And this really might be an issue where the Chinese government has some problem with Microsoft and they're punishing them for something that that Microsoft is doing in some roundabout way. Or it might just be a US-Chinese trade war issue in general and not have much to do with anything else. I'm gonna die here. This is not gonna survive. TechRaptor has an updated version of their article. World of Warcraft servers are being DDoS'd. Other Blizzard games may be affected. I'm not seeing any. The 98330 Blizzard confirmed another series of DDoS attacks. I'm not seeing any Hearthstone DDoS happening, although it might be a little bit harder to do that. I guess it really wouldn't be. Maybe just nobody cares about Hearthstone enough to DDoS it. That would be the ironic statement, is like nobody even cared enough to DDoS Hearthstone these days.
And double K.
TechRaptor has an article, screenshot survey, anthropomorphic animal edition. Apparently this is just an article that's showing games with screenshots, which I really have no interest in being hyped in games based on screenshots that game developers put on Twitter. Yeah, I didn't win. I've been thinking I can do polls, so I could make like a poll for these live streams where people voted like, do you like Hearthstone? Do you not? Something along that times. Would you prefer this or that? I guess, you know, I'd want to hear people's opinions, not really demands, to put it simply. I'm gonna play Zoo Warlock, and I'm gonna play on casual, because if I made a poll, should I keep playing Hearthstone, I imagine people would say yes, keep playing Hearthstone, and then I would just have to say no, because I don't want to play Hearthstone, and it's not getting me really any views. So there's no point in opening the door and pretending like I'm going to let the audience make a decision that I'm not going to make the audience make a decision on. Whereas if I rephrase it and go, do you like Hearthstone, and get people's opinions, that might shift my opinion enough that I change my decision. Which, yeah, I haven't said it in this stream yet, but my decision is, as soon as Second Dinner gets their Marvel Disney card game out in beta, I'm going to try to get into that beta, and I'm going to try and play that game from beta to 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 years into its lifetime, if it's fun, and stop playing Hearthstone instead. But that hasn't happened yet. The game isn't out yet, not even in beta, so it probably won't be for several months. So we're still sticking with Hearthstone until Hearthstone shuts down. And I guess if Hearthstone shut down tomorrow, I would move over to like Magic the Gathering Arena or Gwent or something. TechRaptor has an article. Nintendo and Mages are working on a Famicom Detective Club remakes, which I don't know what Famicom Detective Club is, but oh yeah, we saw this. It's like a really old NES visual novel style game that they're making remakes on, but I don't think anybody has played these games in the original format. Like, I haven't even seen speedrunners or nostalgic people mention those games, and I'm sure that's the case for quite a few games. If I was to guess, there's probably quite a lot of things that aren't worth mentioning. Let's see. TechRaptor has an article here. Spiritfarer made me less scared of death. Yeah, I remember people talking about this game for a brief week or so, and then that was that. Is this game actually out, though, and is this an actual review? It will launch for the PS4, Xbox One, Switch, and PC sometime in 2020, so that's kind of a hype article.
So many possibilities.
This.
Put this apple on your head.
And then this. And then this. And then attack that. Then in the turn. TechRaptor has an article. This is the Police spin-off. Rebel Cops hits PC and console September 17th. I don't know if I would play Rebel Cops, considering I didn't really have any interest in playing This is the Police. It's a top-down kind of strategy game that I think tries to tell a little bit more of a story, but still still not something that caught my attention. And a lot of that might just be
I wonder.
based on the quality of the quality of the graphics more than anything else. Next we have a game called In the Beginning on Steam. Now I have some games left over from basically 2 weeks ago that I still wanted to mention even though I curated, so I'm going to make sure I get through all the games in this stream, so we may go a little long, but that's that. In the Beginning, though, it looks like a strategy simplistic game with way too many dials and knobs. Seems like a management game. Early access, $9.99, English and Russian. Not impressive visually, not impressive by the gameplay mechanics. Give you demons, +1/+1. There we go. Next, we have a game on Steam called Quantum Multiverse.
Not on my
Let's see what this is. This is a dark screenshot syndrome horror game. Seems like it. Seems like the video barely is showing anything. Yeah, a lot of darkness. Now, my fear is ray tracing in particular is causing darkness to occur in more and more games. The Control was certainly that way, but I don't know if that was just a terrible implementation of Control using ray tracing, or if this is just going to be the new standard where we are going to start to see more and more cases of games that try to have all of its lighting augmented through ray tracing, and thus somehow that means that I should have killed one of these to protect this guy and this guy, because they make their games darker for ray tracing to have more of an effect that games will get darker anyways. And we already have a major problem with dark screenshot syndrome, like, and dark games in general. When I was setting up Wolfenstein Youngbloods, the first thing it asked me to do was adjust the brightness and make the game incredibly darker than the default setting was, and I'm like, I'm not gonna do that. Not in a no way in heck am I gonna make the game more dark so people can't see it or I can't see it. So I just left it as at the default setting, although there wasn't even really a default setting. So if you hit left twice and then right once, you would still feel like you were somewhat in the right default place, but you weren't actually. May not get 3 victories at this rate as we're burning through the last bits of news. That's fine. I can get one off screen without a lot of frustration. Gamatsu has an article here for the PS4. The Final Fantasy VII Remake new key visuals remakes the original key visual, which is to say this screenshot here, which was is remaking this screenshot here, which was, I believe, the cover of the game. Which, okay, yeah, good for it. We kind of expected that to happen. It's not a surprise. It would be more surprising if it didn't do something along those lines. Because the remake does need, any remake needs to feel like it's respecting and honoring the original game and not just going in completely different directions. And Tifa's undershirt aside, it seems like you're doing at least 50-50 when it comes to Final Fantasy VII's remake for what we've seen. The much more important thing that Final Fantasy VII's remake is doing is changing how the gameplay plays, and that will be for better or for worse how it's received, I imagine. There have been a few stories where minor instances of censorship, which I still will firmly hold any censorship is not acceptable, but I have certainly seen minor instances of censorship blown out of proportion more than they really deserve to be. Like the Final Fantasy VIII remaster that came to PC, it being slightly censored isn't really the important part to report on that. What the problem with that game is that it's just a terrible port, and it looks horrible and plays horrible, and you're better off playing the original game, which is also available on Steam. Moving on, we have a story here, Where Are We Now?, which looks like it's a kind of pixely animated, says it's an RPG, but I would have suspected it's more of a point-and-click adventure game.
Gul'dan versus Anduin.
It's $8.99 discounted. It says it's a build-your-own adventure game where you start as a robot stranded on a floating island and are forced to find your ways to proceed to other floating islands. So that doesn't seem like that's much of a game. $8.99 discount is too much. English only. Yeah, I don't see anything here that I'd really want to play. That seems bad. Right. So this was a story from a couple days ago, last week. TechRaptor has this article, CCP Games announced an EVE Online grief counseling for new players losing their first ships. Which, like, EVE Online is a tough game, to quote TechRaptor, and you will lose your first ship rather frequently. So, the thing I would say about EVE Online is I don't know how anybody that does even a small amount of research is going to be sold into playing EVE Online without knowing what they're getting into, which is a super difficult game that's kind of expensive, that's this forever MMO. I don't think EVE Online really gets any new players unless it's friends bringing in friends. Like, I doubt you get many people that go, what's this game called EVE Online? Let me start playing this, and they would play it for a considerable amount of time and fall in love with it. Next, we have a game on Steam called Widower's Sky, which looks pretty. Unfortunately, it's it's mostly negative reviews of its 11 reviews. Looks very pretty. $6.99 discounted, English and a bunch of languages. Let's see what the negative reviews are. This has a lot of potential, but it needs some work. The preview made me very interested in the game. Got it. Day one. My first suggestion is an actual tutorial covering all of the controls, slowly and without every function enabled at start. Fix the resolution options. There are two 1080 settings. They are not the same thing. It's loud. Controls are very confusing. Camera's just bad. You constantly have no idea what you're doing. So, seems like this developer made a pretty looking game that does not explain itself in any ways. And it's the only game from this developer. So I guess I could be exceedingly generous and put this on the follow list and see if maybe it fixes itself, but on the other hand, it's $6.99 right now. It's not in early access. This is how they wanted to deliver it, and based on the receptions, they didn't do a good job on their delivery. So yeah, I'll be exceedingly generous, but it really didn't deserve that. Next we have Creature in the Well, which is mostly positive, although I've heard some people review it poorly too. A kind of mix between pinball and strategy game that I've been keeping my eyes on. This is a game that probably should go directly to my wish list. $13.49 discounted, and a bunch of language support. The pinball aspect probably could wear out its welcome somewhat quickly, but I don't think the game is that long, so yeah. I know what I'm getting into when I'm buying that game, so I don't think I'd have a problem with it. Next we have a game on Steam called Pizza Game. That's a visual novel style game that looks very westernized, but it might be something here. I like that this is a different art style, very comic booky, very webcomic. Let's see if this developer has made anything else. No, they haven't, but they do have a modern developer page, and this is rated positively. They want $9.99 English with full audio. And yeah, I'm always looking for full audio visual novels, and I'm always 185 it says it has 185,000 words, all of which are typos. I think they're probably lying there, so there might be a argument for there might be a claim for false advertising there. Just gonna go ahead and kill that. I could have done more damage. I didn't make my decisions well enough. So yeah, I'll put Pizza Game on the follow list. The wish list. I guess I'd wish listed. It already meets the qualifications. Right. This. 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 That. He's got all these cards, so he's trying to play for something, but if he doesn't clear the board completely, all I need is 5 damage. So if I can keep just a couple of these on the field, I'm fine. TechRaptor has an article. New Game Plus is coming to Days Gone on September 13th. I imagine most people have forgotten Days Gone even exists. I don't think there's really any reason to play Days Gone, unfortunately. It was just a good effort, I suppose. We've got to try to have games that are new intellectual properties and new series, but unfortunately it doesn't always work out. Let's see.
Job's done.
There we go. Let's see, next we have a game on Steam called The Merchant Life, which is mixed in the last 30 days, but mostly positive over its lifetime. This looks a little bit like an Oregon Trail game, but it's not visually as polished as I kind of would like it to be. But I kind of would like to play something that is kind of a merchant trading strategy game, kind of like Oregon Trail, although Oregon Trail really isn't a trading strategy game as much as it is its kind of own thing. $10.99, English only. I think this game will go on the fall list, but I'm probably being a little generous too. I've been really generous in the past week, which is just going to end up with me having a huge wish list or follow list. Next we have a game on Steam called Whipsy and the Lost Atlas. This looks like a Kirby style game with a character that has a whip, and you know, this is what a Game Boy series like Kirby, which is where that originated, should go. If you're going to make something inspired by a Game Boy game, it should be full color, it should look good, it should play well, it should run at a very good frame rate, and because of this looks like the one in a million example of something. It's rated mostly positive, $5.99, a little expensive but not too much, English only as language, which is fine. Yeah, this looks like something that deserves to be on the fall list, because it looks like something. I probably should set a month aside next year and say that this is going to be the nostalgia month where we play games that look like NES games or Game Boy games or Super NES games, and just once a year try to play a couple of games that look like that, because there's a decent number of them. Let's see. Next we have a game on Steam called Cures and Curios. This is another student project from DigiPen, so I believe this is a virtual reality game for the HTC Vive that's free, so check it out. English full audio. How much of this is actually a game and how much of this is just a animated sequence, I don't know. Like, mostly it looks like it's an animated sequence with some mini games around it, but the fact that the DigiPen students are even trying to make something for the HTC Vive is slightly interesting, and this dark Western art style is kind of interesting too. I guess you're running a medicine shop. Yeah, you're running a medicine show cart in the weird old west, full of ingredients and tools. Players will concoct potions. So it's taking kind of a basic concept we've seen in other games, low effort games frankly, but putting it in VR and really trying something different. Next we have a game on Steam called Minoria. This is a hack and slash platformer, fast paced game, a little dark, but I think that's with the theme. RPG Metroidvania according to the tags. It looks very interesting. It's rated very positively. It came out August 27th, so I guess maybe it's out of early access or I just missed it. $19.99 and a bunch of language supported. This is the spiritual successor to that other game, is it? Right. Which I'd have to see if they are even referencing the other game to remember the name of it. Momodora, yeah. Yeah, it's, I believe, the spiritual successor or direct sequel to Momodora. 68 on Metacritic. Maybe don't trust the Metacritic as much as people who actually bought the game. So that should definitely be on the follow list, or the wish list actually. We have MXGP 2019 official motocross game. Not sure you really want to play a motocross game, but if there was one to check out, this would be the one to check out. 1 second, I'm gonna cough. Sorry about that, but man, I got a major tickle in my throat. MXGP, yeah, I'll put it on the follow list and have to think about how many of these racing games I really want to play. I don't think I've ever actually played a motocross one, so it would make sense to play one of them, whatever the best one is, on Steam. Next, we have a game on Steam called Lady's Order, which I believe this is one of those games that's a Japanese RPG game that has a patch to show nudity, and that's really the only reason that they're being sold. But they sell relatively well, obviously, because we get a consistent one of those. These $3.99 English only, that's a little weird too. But yeah, otherwise you just call it an RPG Maker game. And that's really what all you can boil it down to, is without me doing the specific research to see if there's some kind of patch here. This may not have some kind of uncensored patch or any kind of content like that, but a lot of them do. Almost all of them, frankly, that look like RPG Maker games. Which really begs the question, why bother to even make the RPG elements to it? Just get rid of that part. Next we have Knights and Bikes, the spiritual successor to Costume Quest from Double Fine, being published directly by Double Fine and not Fig or Microsoft, who now owns them. I want to play Knights and Bikes, and you can see it's positively reviewed as a kind of kid-friendly strategy RPG experience, which is what I believe it is. I'm fairly certain that's what it is. Isn't more RPG experience, although it might not be. It might be more of a kind of open world adventure game. The thing that I'm not seeing from Costume Quest here is random spawning of fights or any fights at all. It seems like it's more kind of a transversal game. You gotta fight something eventually, but it's almost like a top-down twin-stick action gameplay fight mechanic. This might be another example of Double Fine making a game that you thought was one thing and turned out to be another. $19.99 though, English full audio. I'll put it on the follow list. Let's see. Next we have a game on Steam called River Legends, a fly fishing adventure. What was about this that caught my attention? Playing a pixelated adventure game around fly fishing, while a interesting concept, I don't think actually would sell. Like, unless there's something more to this, it seems like you're just kind of making a bad decision of combining a couple things. Yeah, I don't see anything here that would make me want to spend more than 4 minutes playing this game. I do want to play a fishing game, but I think it has to be pretty hyper-realistic. This also has a third-party EULA and is English only. We've got 2 more games, and then we'll be done with the stream. So yeah, I do want to find a good fishing game. I have yet to ever find a good fishing game. Next we have Night Island on Steam, which if these videos would play, I wish all would just play at double the speed. Looks like it's a dark screenshot, top-down, twin-stick shooter experience. Yeah. It's a little bit visually polished, more than most, but I'm not a huge fan of the top-down twin-stick shooters. So what would sell me on Night Island? It's early access, English language not supported. Good, it's Chinese only. I don't even have to worry about it. I guess, again, I would say Chinese games are starting to look a little bit better, though. A lot less garbage, a lot less low efforts. And then we've got this game called Treater, which looks like it's a full-on Dead Space spiritually inspired game, even with the life bars and status bars being on your back. The enemies you're fighting look a lot like Dead Space. The area you're walking around in looks a lot like a spaceship. Heavily inspired, I think, from Dead Space. Possibly some other games like Gears of War. So this is very intriguing, although it's an early access game, and this might be a lot of promise with very little delivery. It's $10.99, English with full audio. This will definitely go on the follow list though, because it deserves a chance. And if it can come out of early access and turn out to be a good game, I will be very happy. But that is a big if. So that brings me to the Humble Bundle, which I believe the RPG bundle was one we already looked at. And I am so broke for pretty much now to the end of the year. So I don't think I'll be buying any of the Humble Bundles, even if they are good deals. And I don't think I'll be buying any of the Steam bundles or Steam sale things either. So, oh, I did want to mention that let me see if we can find this. Trilobite Games put out a message to everybody who was following them, or at least me on Twitter. So we'll show a message here. Rydo, thank you for following Trilobite Games, producer of the 7th Guest and 11th Hour computer games. We're bringing the 7th Guest up to life again. This would be like the 3rd or 4th time they've resold the 7th Guest in some way with the 7th Guest board game. Now you can re-enter the mysterious and magical Stoff mansion filled to the rafters with diabolic puzzles, trivia, riddles, and other mind games to test your wits and knowledge against your friends and family. Check it out at, and then apparently there's supposed to be a link here, but I don't even see the link. It's weird to get a direct message on Twitter from anybody, let alone an advertisement in direct messages. Clearly they spammed people, and the fact that Twitter allows that is surprising, to say the least, and definitely not welcome. I would quickly unfollow Trilobite Games if they did this a second time. I have no interest in playing their board game. I think maybe if there were more puzzles and trivia and things, which there really wasn't any trivia in 7th Guest. If those elements are in the board games, it would have been better for them to make a remaster or complete remake of 7th Guest with that element. It'd be better if they were spending their time working on an actual sequel to the 7th Guest series instead of having a fan-sponsored game called The 13th Doll in development by not Trilobite Games. I don't think Trilobite Games actually made the 7th Guest at all. I think they are just the license holder. Let's see. And I'm scrolling through my Twitter feed just to see if there's anything really that needs to be mentioned or any bit of new news on this Monday. which I doubt there is any. Again, then I'll also have to decide whether this stream actually made it to my channel or not, and correct for that. Yep, there's no real news. Borderlands 3 is soon to be out. PC Gamer, I believe, went for the hate clicks by giving it a low rating because they don't like the what I assume is juvenile jokes in it, which is ridiculous because that's kind of what Borderlands has to be. And I'm still not sure when we start to see people that aren't flaming SJWs review Borderlands 3. We'll see how well the game actually lands and feels like Borderlands 1 or 2, which is kind of all it can be. It's just more of the same, slightly improved, slightly better. They really can't get too far from their base on the third one. Now, maybe if they ended and wrapped up the trilogy and killed off all or most of the characters, then there could be something in the fourth game or the reboot of the next trilogy that takes it in a drastically different direction, but I don't think you can really do that for Borderlands. I did hear mention Hammerlock has a boyfriend. That may have been mentioned in some DLC or some other part of Borderlands 2 already. Fine, whatever. That certainly was the case with some of the other characters too. And then Flack, the robot, is this agendered character that was getting people banned if they misgendered the robot character in the Borderlands forums, and that was kind of ridiculous too. But those aren't the big issues. The big issues is the Epic Store exclusivity is a good reason not to buy Borderlands 3, and the way 2K false DMCA struck somebody is a good reason for me not to buy the game or cover it, and so I've already chosen not to buy it. I don't think I'm ever going to buy it, and it really sucks to say that because I love Borderlands. It's one of my favorite games, but I don't think there's a reason for me to cover it as a YouTuber, and I think there's probably a good reason for everybody to kind of think about maybe not buying it, at least in the first 6 months, just as a boycott at the very least of the Epic Games Store, if not a boycott of 2K. Anyways, that's going to be it for this stream. As always, I ask you to like, share, subscribe, comment, and watch every second of my videos. If you want a friend to follow me on any social media sites, there's a whole bunch of links down below in the description box. And if you want to support me even further, there's a link to Patreon, or you can friend me on Steam and gift me a game off my wishlist. Thank you for watching. Have a good evening.